have some fun. If y'all remember last week, started off and we talked about the poetic seams. And basically my thesis that I'm arguing is that we start in the Bible and we go left to right. You know, we start with the Torah, then we move from the Torah to the prophets, the writings, New Testament. And you move left to right, and when you do that, that's what's going to help impact interpreting the Bible. It's what's going to help us understand what's going on in the text. And last week, we went ahead and went over Genesis. We went over the poetic seams, as they're called. And I showed you guys how each one of these is strategically placed. They're parallel, they're identical, and they all point to Christ. And this is the part of the structure in the Torah, right? And you guys remember how that went over, and that helped interpret Isaiah 63. So it was everyone on the same page. Y'all remember all that? We good? Mm-hmm. All right. What we're going to do today is we're going to keep working in the Torah, and we're going to keep building on what we've already built. And what we're going to be looking at specifically this morning is Genesis 1:1. And so if you guys would turn to Genesis 1:1, then we're going to talk about this for quite a while, actually. All right, so anyways, a while back, I've done a lot of research on Genesis 1:1, and the one thing that has been consistent is that there's always conflict over what it means. I mean, every commentary I went in had a different answer. And even the New American Commentary, one of the things that it said is, concerning the word beginning, it said, honestly, the commentator ended just saying, look, we're not really sure. There's really no way to tell if it's talking about a definite point in time, if it's talking about a period of time. He said there's just not really sure, and so the guy ended just with it kind of up in the air. And so they're trying to figure out what's going on with this, you know. And people have been fighting over this for years. And when I did my own research on it, looking into it, I realized part of the reason. Okay, and part of the reason is because if you look at the word reshith in Hebrew, it's used 51 times in the Old Testament. And only like 6 of them have anything to do with time. The rest of them have nothing to do with it at all. And that's where part of the problem comes in, you know, because we're thinking, what in the world? Because there's a couple words the author could have easily used if he was trying to communicate about time. The first one would be reshon, which, let me just write this out for you. Reshon is used hundreds of times in the Old Testament, always dealing with the beginning, the first something. You know, you've got when the tribes of Israel are going to say, you know, who's going to go up first in Joshua against the Philistines? Well, God, you know, or God says, well, send Judah up, Reshon, send them first. You know, many examples of just either dealing with time or just dealing with order, or it's the first month of the year, the Reshon month of the year, or the first day of the week, the Reshon day of the week. It's used for dealing with time, with beginning, all throughout the Scripture, tons. And just a few examples, even dealing with kingdoms. If you'll look at just, for instance, 1 Chronicles 29, 29. 1 Chronicles 29, 29. Let's look at that. One of you guys read that for me.
Now the acts of King David from first to last are written in the Chronicles of Samuel the seer, in the Chronicles of Nathan the prophet, and in the Chronicles of Gad the seer.
Yeah, you see the acts of King David from the first to the last, from his first act to his last act. Does that seem a little more definite there? If you look at, let's go with 2 Chronicles 9:29. Someone read that for us.
And the rest of the acts of Solomon, First and last, are they not written in the book of Nathan the prophet and the prophecy of Ahijah the Shilonite, and the visions of Edo the seer?
I mean, it just keeps going. If you look at 12:15, now the Acts Rehoboam, the first to the last. I mean, the word's used continually, first and last, right? Y'all see that tons. Now, also the thing about it too, we're going to catch this later, but the word last there is acharon, which is word paired with this. We're going to talk about these later, but you see this all the time, first and last. Throughout the Old Testament, dealing with time, dealing with order, I mean, the word fits perfectly. It's used plenty. Okay, so if the author, if he was wanting to clearly communicate about the beginning, if the purpose of the Torah is to start off telling us about history, then the author could have easily used this word, and he could have easily used, I believe it's Tehillah. Close, but not quite. Something like that. Tehillah. This word is also used plenty dealing with beginning. Either one of these words. An example would be, look at Genesis 42. I think it's verses 20 and 21. This is crappily translated, so let me see if I have my translation with me. I don't know if I brought. David, do you remember how you translated it?
In that one?
Yeah, in Genesis 41. It's Genesis 41, verse 20 and 21.
I never did translate.
Okay.
I just looked at the Hebrew.
Well, let me read this to you guys real quick. Actually, let me just try to see if I can.
This also means time?
The Tehillah does in this one, but when you're reading it,
it's great rendered as beginning.
okay, and the fattens, let's see, and the ugly and fat cows ate the seven first cows were shown, the seven first cows. Y'all see that? The fat and ugly cows ate the seven first cows. And then it says in verse 20, and the first is shown there, and then the second verse, this is the way it should read, something more like, let's see, and they went and they digested them, and they did not see that. They digested them, and they did not, something like they were not seen anymore because they were being digested, and let's see, and their appearance was like that in the beginning. This would be the way to put it. Most translations have something like before, but that's the word Tehillah, and it's being used, and their appearance was the same as in the beginning. You guys see that? Mm-hmm. So they look the same as when it started, when it began, and that's where you have Tehillah using the same thing, dealing with time. Here, and it's used multiple other times. Rishon is used, tons. It's used hundreds of times. This one's used like 30 or 40. It's not used as many. But either one of these would have been the clearest and easiest to use when trying to communicate. If the author's goal is just talk to us about history, that would have been, these two, either one of those would have been fine. Reshith, on the other hand, is where the problem comes in. This is the word the author has used. So we're going to look at reshith, and we're going to look at some of its uses, and you guys are going to see for yourself where the problem comes in. Okay, look at Exodus 23:19. Someone read that for me. Exodus 23:19.
Bring the best of your first fruits of your soil to the house of the Lord your God. Do not cook a young goat and smoke it.
Bring the best of the first fruits to the house of the Lord your God. Now, what word is reshith in this sentence?
First fruits?
Nope.
Best.
You might think.
You would want to think that. The best of the first fruits.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, like, I don't know what it's called, and forgive my ignorance because I haven't taken it over yet, but in Greek, you can write kind of the English version of a Greek word, and it's still...
Transliteration?
Yeah, transliteration. Is there a Hebrew transliteration for the word reshith?
Hebrew transliteration? Yeah, I can give that to you later if that's what you're asking.
Okay. It'd just be more helpful for me, not being able to write
No, okay.
Hebrew words.
Actually, here, this thing has... I'll just copy this. This guy put do. Oh, sorry, started writing in Hebrew. I was an idiot. All right.
Okay. you got
They got Hebrew right
This is what they have. So that's their transliteration of it for English.
How do you
Um,
pronounce it?
Reshith. It's Reshith.
So
Yeah.
Reshit?
that. Yep.
Yeah, TH is on the end, Reshith.
Okay,
But,
thanks.
you know, you
For
just
me
be
and
right
Mark,
now.
that works.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, we've got Reshith, and looking at it, so right here it says the best of the first fruits. Does that have anything to do with time? Beginning? I mean, no. It deals with, right here, this first definition. That's why I put it. So you guys see right here, this deals with deals with the high quality of something, right? Bring the reshith, the best of your first fruits. So right here we've got one that means high quality. And the thing is, this one is used more. Reshith means this more than anything else. Let's go look at a bunch of other verses. Let's look at Exodus. How about this? Exodus 34:26 says the same thing. Bring the best of the first fruits. Okay, look at Leviticus 23:10. Leviticus 23:10. Someone read that for us.
Speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, when you enter the land which I am going to give to you and reap its harvest, then you shall bring in the sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the priest.
In your translation on this one, they put first fruits. So now they're translating it as first fruits. But it's still, the idea, it's saying the best of your harvest. You understand what I'm saying? I would argue against the idea of first fruits. I don't think reshith means first fruits, and I'll tell you why. They're translating that because in English that gives you the idea of high quality. Okay, but that falls apart when you look at Numbers 15:21 and tell me if Numbers 15:21. Tell me if that can be translated as first fruit. Someone read that for us. 15:21.
From the first of your dough you shall give to the Lord an offering throughout your generations.
From the first of your dough. Can you translate that as first fruits? No. The idea, when they connect it with harvest, when they connect it with grain, that's when they start translating it as first fruits. But I'm going to argue that's not what the definition is. The definition is dealing with the high quality of something. Bring the first of your ground meal, bring the first of your harvest, bring the first of your oil. You know, this was the first of this. So y'all see that. That's pretty clear. It's pretty obvious. I would say at least 30 out of the 50 uses of this word are this right here. So when we're starting off with this, and we're trying to figure out what the meaning of it is in Genesis 1, you see where a problem comes in. Whereas these are used hundreds of times dealing with time, this isn't being used hardly at all. Okay, and when it is used with time, it's more ambiguous. Look at now we're going to look at a second use. Look at Jeremiah 28. It's close, Yogi. All right. Someone read Jeremiah 28, verse 1.
In that same year, at the beginning of the reign of Zedekiah, king of Judah, in the 5th month of the 4th year.
Wait, stop right there. Now think about that for a second. In the beginning of the reign, in the what?
5th month.
5th month of the 4th year. Beginning. If we're taking beginning as a definite, exact point in time, what's the problem with it being the 4th year, the 5th month of his reign?
Not the beginning.
That's not the beginning, right? So the author's using the term beginning here, and then he says in the 4th month of the 5th year, or 5th year, 4th month, whatever it is. So right there you have a extended period of time that's happened, and the author refers to this 4 years as the beginning. That's where reshith's being used, right? So you see now we have another problem. It's being used as the beginning, but it's still not dealing with a point in time. You guys see that? And it's the same thing happens if you look at Jeremiah 27 verse 1 and Jeremiah 26 verse 1. You have the same beginning of the reign of Zedekiah, the son of Joash, king of Judah. Right? This the word of the Lord came to him. Chapter 27 verse 1, you have the same thing. It says the beginning, right? Well, that happens even before this did, and it's still calling it the beginning. Does that make sense? And so right here we have reshith functioning as it's dealing with an indefinite, undefined period of time. I just say at the start of something, at the beginning or at the start. So now we have this word being used as an indefinite. You guys see how that's indefinite, how it's undefined? It's not clear. Okay. So now even our conservative commentaries like the New American Standard are looking at this and they're saying, okay, we've got problems if we're trying to pin this down to an exact point in time. So you guys see that there. And so now we have these words which could easily fit. Right here's two ranges of meaning which we find within the text. And again, only like 6 or 7 of the meanings of the word even have anything to do with time. The other 40-something deal with either quality, and then there's the last usage, which we're about to look at. All right, with that being said, turn to Numbers 24, verse 20. Someone read that for us.
And he looked at Amalek and took up his discourse and said, Amalek was the first of the nations, but his end shall be destruction.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. He was the what of the nations?
First of the nations.
What is that saying? What does it mean?
You might think it means that he was the first nation ever to exist.
Well, that would be a problem.
That would be.
Because he's not, right?
Right.
Curtis, what does this mean? He's the first of the nations.
Maybe the highest, I don't know, the highest or the...
That's it. Okay. Dealing with high social status. He's the top of he's the top dog, the king, the prominent one of the nations. So now you have reshith being used as dealing with the high social status of the individual, or high status. So you have it being used as the high status of an individual. Try to translate perhaps prominent one. Right, so you've got this other meaning where you've got reshith looking at high social status, prominent one, something like that. Notice also you have reshith there, and it's paired with, guess what word?
The opposite of it.
Y'all remember the poetic themes? Acharit. It's paired with this. This is going to come back later, so we'll talk about this soon. But so you have it dealing with the high social status or high status of an individual, something like that. Okay. So now you've got these 3 different ways this word's being used within the text. And so what we're going to try to ask is which one is this referring to? Okay? And what I'm going to argue is that it's dealing with number 3. It's dealing with a prominent individual. All right? And let's go into this a little further.
Before you do, can I read a footnote?
Sure, go ahead.
This is from Seth Postel. He says, Rashi long ago argued that reshith is not the proper Hebrew word for the initiation of a sequence of time. He writes, and the scripture is not here to teach the order of creation, that is to say that these things came first, because if it was there to teach this, it would have been written Berishonah, which Caleb said. instead of reshith.
So that's Rashi from what, 800, 1200 years ago?
Yeah, he came along about 1100 AD.
What I'm gonna argue is that this is dealing with number 3. It's saying, by means of the prominent one, or a prominent individual, God created the heavens and the earth. All right, and let's look into this a little further. Look at Psalm 78:51. Someone read that for me.
51?
Yeah.
He struck all the firstborn in Egypt, the first progeny of the tents of Ham.
Anyone familiar with Hebrew parallelism? What we have in Hebrew parallelism is the author will say the same thing twice. Guess which word is reshith in this? It's not this one. So what we have here is you have firstborn being paired with reshith, the first of their virility, the first of their strength. You have it being paired with firstborn, and Egypt obviously is paired with tents of Ham. Tents of Ham in Egypt, you have the same thing being said. So you have firstborn and being parallel with reshith. You have Egypt being parallel with tents of Ham. And so what you have here are these two are being set as having a similar range of meaning. Okay, and you see that reshith is closely connected with by the author to firstborn. Okay, back looking at this text, who's the prominent one of the family in Genesis? Firstborn. In the Old Testament, who's considered the prominent son? The firstborn. The firstborn is considered the prominent son. Okay, that's the chieftain, the top. And even looking at the word reshith itself, it comes from rosh, where you have head. That's the idea, head or first, top, something like that. That's kind of it's a break off of that, and that's where you can see just dealing with the head, the quality of the firstborn, the prominent one, all this. So what I'm looking at, when I see this and I'm looking at Genesis 1, I don't think the author is trying to teach us about time. I think the author is communicating to us about something else. I think the author is talking about the firstborn of God. By means of the firstborn, by means of the prominent one, God created the heavens and the earth. I think it's talking about the Son of God. I think that's what Genesis 1:1 is talking about. And with that being said, you have through, here, let me just write it out, all right? Write a definition for you the way I translate Genesis 1. And I'll pass this to you guys so you can look at it yourself. This is my translation of Genesis 1:1, and then we're going to build on this for real quick.
How common is this view in church history?
It was prevalent in the beginning of church history, but it dwindled, I would say, as people started thinking more about history than about intertextuality. I think there was a switch there.
So I've heard.
Justin and Irenaeus and Tertullian held this view,
Yeah.
as well as Targum Neophiti.
Yeah, I've heard that one.
So right here, where this comes from is, look at this. So you have reshith, right? Well, on the front of reshith is the bait preposition. This is where you get by reshith, right? The bait preposition can be used dealing with time, when. It can be used instrumentally, dealing with the means through which something was done. I'm arguing it's being used instrumentally. And so what it's saying is, by means of the firstborn, God created the heavens and earth. And so what we have here in Genesis 1:1, in the New American Commentary, I remember the author saying Jesus isn't here. He's nowhere in this. All you have is God and the Spirit. You have the Spirit of God hovering above the water, and Jesus doesn't show up till Genesis 3:15. He's like a byproduct of the fall. He happens after the fall. So is that a problem? If he is everything, having him come after the fall is a problem. Whereas if we take this translation, we have everything is created through him. He's not a product of the fall. You have the Trinity in verse 1. You have the Son of God. You have Elohim, referring to, I would say, God the Father. You have the Spirit hovering on the water. You have the Trinity in Genesis 1:1. And if you're looking at it as a narrative, when you get to Genesis 1:28, it says, let us make man in our image. Who's talking? The Trinity. All three of them. Okay, and so when it starts off, everything's being created through the Son of God. All the heavens and earth are being brought together through him. Okay, by him, for him, in him. It's all about him. So the Torah, I'm arguing, starting off, aimed at the Son of God and dealing with the Trinity. Okay, and another person that thought so, look at Proverbs 30, verse 4.
What do you mean by part of the fall? I mean,
What I would say is Jesus doesn't show up until after the fall. If he's not a part of Genesis 1:1. In the text, yeah, he's not there. And so you have the text starting, it's just about history and God, and then when the fall happens, then Jesus shows up. And if he's, as I'm going to argue, as big of a figure as we would think in the Scriptures, then he would be there at the beginning, I would think. He would be a part of it.
well, let's say, I mean, if they say we, and we already, I mean, now that there's a Trinity, then he is there when they say God. But I guess you're just saying the person is Christ. We don't.
Yeah, the Son of God, as far as being put in as an individual character in the story, he's not there, right? You just have Elohim and the Spirit, and that's it. The firstborn, he's off somewhere else. And I mean, to me, that'd be a problem if he's as big as we want to make him. But I'm going to argue he's right here. Now look at Proverbs 34. Who has ascended into heaven and descended? Who has gathered the wind in his fist? Who has wrapped the waters in his garment? Who has established the ends of his earth? What is his name or his son's name? Surely you know. Every word of God is tested. He is a shield to those who take refuge in him. So the Proverbs, what does this guy say? What is his name or what is his son's name? I'm going to argue, what's he looking at? I'm going to argue he's looking at the Torah. He's looking back and he's saying, what is his name or his son's name? You know, if you go to Proverbs 8, and we're not going to go through it, but the whole thing, it starts talking about wisdom, who was there with God at the beginning, who is the master builder beside God, he was there while God was making, and all things were being made through him. Right? You have that there. You have these texts which are pulling back, talking about somebody being here with God. And I'm arguing they're looking at the Torah, and they're right, because he's right here. This is what it's talking about. Okay?
What was that last scripture reference?
Here. Proverbs 8. Proverbs 8 verses, here, we'll just read some of it. Proverbs 8 verses 22 forward. So y'all just listen to this. Okay, Proverbs 8 verse 22 forward. The Lord possessed me at the beginning of his way, before his works of old. From everlasting I was established. From the beginning, from the earliest times of the earth, when there were no depths, I was brought forth. When there were no springs abounding with water. Before the mountains were settled, before the hills I was brought forth. While he had not yet made the earth and the fields, nor the first dust of the world. When he established the heavens, I was there. When he inscribed a circle on the face of the deep. When he made the firm skies above. When the springs of the deep heaven became. When he set for the sea its boundaries, so that water would not transgress his command. When he marked out the foundations of the earth. Then I was there beside him, a master workman, and I was daily his delight, rejoicing always before him. We're just going to stop there. But it's talking about, it's characterizing wisdom as a person who's there with God at the beginning.
That's right. What the word beginning is in verse 22.
Yes, it is also there.
Isn't wisdom also characterized as a woman?
Reshith is the word.
What's that?
The word beginning in verse 22
yeah,
is reshith.
Yeah, you're right. And in Proverbs, it talks about Lady Wisdom, and it pits it against Lady Folly.
Mm-hmm.
And it presents two ways. You have follow this way or that way. All right, and both these are pit against each other. And yeah, I would definitely say there's something Christological going on that we need to think about while we're going through the Proverbs. But, okay, with that being said, this is the evidence, this is what I'm putting forward. And I think from the Old Testament, I'm going to argue that you can look at this and you can see Genesis 1:1 dealing with the prominent one, or the firstborn. Everything's being created by the firstborn. With that being said, okay, am I the only one that thinks this? Well, let's turn to Colossians 1:15 through 17. Let's see what Paul thinks. Someone read Colossians 1:15 through 17.
He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation.
Wait, what was that?
He is the image of the invisible God.
The firstborn of all creation.
Yeah.
All right, keep going. Verse 16.
For by him all things were created, in the heavens and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. He is also head of the body, the church.
We'll just stop right there. Okay. So right here, what does Paul say? He is the firstborn of all creation. All things were created by him, in him, for him, and through him. Right? I'm going to argue you have almost a direct quote of Genesis 1 where he says, he is the firstborn of all creation, for by him all things were created on heaven and earth. What is that? That means the firstborn, God created the heavens and the earth. Paul, looking back at Genesis 1, I'm going to argue, and he's taking and dealing with the firstborn. He's saying all things are created through Christ, through the Son of God. And I think he's getting that straight from the Torah. And here in Colossians, you see him bring that up. With that being said, look at Hebrews 1 through 3. Hebrews chapter 1, verses 1 through 3. Let's see what the author of Hebrews thinks. Someone read verses 1 through 3 on chapter 1 of Hebrews.
God, after he spoke long ago to the fathers and the prophets in many portions and in many ways, in these last days has spoken to us in his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, through whom also he made the world.
Through whom he what?
Also made the world.
Okay, keep going. Verse 3.
And he is the radiance of the glory and the exact representation of his nature, and upholds all things by the word of his power. When he had made purification of sins, he sat down at the right hand of the majesty on high.
When you look at Hebrews, the whole book of Hebrews, the author of Hebrews is pulling from where to make his argument? The Old Testament. The entire time it's quote after quote after quote. And he says, first off, notice what word he says. Remember last week in verse 2, chapter 1, verse 2, in these acharit, in these last days, he's spoken to us. Y'all remember that? It talked about the guy who's coming in the acharit. Well, right here he says, in these last days, he's spoken to us through his Son, through whom he made what?
Everything.
He made the world. You see how he says it as an offhanded comment? It's like the author of Hebrews gets it. Paul gets it. Paul says, by means of the firstborn, all the heavens and the earth were created. Right here in verse 2, the Son through whom he appointed, he made all things. Someone read verse 6 of Hebrews.
And again, when he brings the firstborn into the world, he says,
Wait, just stop right there. What's he pulling at? And again, when he brings the firstborn into the world, what's he naming the Son of God? Firstborn. He's saying when he again brings the firstborn. Again, what I'm arguing is the author of Hebrews just making this up? Is he inspired by God and he's just creating stuff that's never been heard before? I'm going to argue no. The whole book is littered with the Old Testament. He's pulling everything out of it. So this guy, he's recognizing that by means of the Son of God, all things were created, all things were put together, all things were pieced. He calls him the firstborn again and again. Look at Hebrews chapter 2, verse 10. Someone read that for us.
For it was fitting for him, for whom all things and by whom all things, and bringing many sons to glory, to make the captain of their salvation, or the top of their salvation, perfect.
You notice how he keeps offhandedly. It is fitting for him, for whom all things are, for whom all things, from whom all things are, and through whom all things are. He keeps referring to him as the one who through everything has come into being through him. You guys catch that? The author of Hebrews keeps referring to it as the one through whom all things are coming in. It's referring to the firstborn, the Son of God. All things came in through him. Okay, let's look at John 1.
So, Caleb, the ones who hold to the Christ doesn't show up until 3:15, are they the ones who hold to like the royal translation of like God is speaking to his royal
Elohim dealing
voice?
with, yes, okay, not all of them. There are people with different views. One view, the historical cultural view, is that back in that day, they would have thought about a royal court and all this stuff, and so they would have thought of God talking to his angels and all that kind of stuff. Do you see that in the text anywhere? No. I'm going to argue the text is our authority, not what these people look up in history. I'm sure there were plenty of other viewpoints of what people thought as well that probably just got pushed on the sideline. All right? But yeah, people have said that, and I'm arguing that let's stick to the text. And this text starts it off, and the characters that the text brings in, let's examine them. And I'm going to argue, that's where you have the Trinity as being the first characters introduced into the text. And so the let us make man in our image is not referring to a royal court. If it was, the author could have said something. I'm going to argue it's referring to the first three individuals in the text. John 1, verses 1 through 3, just look at this. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and apart from him, nothing came into being which has come into being. What's John looking at? I'm going to argue he's looking back at Genesis 1. He's referring to Christ as the eternal Word. In Genesis 1, when God speaks, what happens? So everything's made by means of the firstborn. It's created, and God starts speaking, and through his Word, everything comes in. And John's looking at this and saying, in the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. The Word was God. He's pulling, and I'm going to argue straight from the Torah. And what else I would press, this is just my thoughts, when he's saying the Word was God, what is he referring to? You guys mind if I erase some of this?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so you have, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. So how does he know that the Word was God? All right, what I'm going to argue is right here at the beginning you have, you have reshith, right? By means the prominent one. In Hebrew, we have what is always used many times and is known as word plays. Where the author, you have Adam, he names his son Sheth because God had shed through him another son. God had put to him another son. Saul's name is Shaul, which means asked. Because the people Shaul, the king, they asked for a king. You have all these different types of word plays that function in the Old Testament where the author uses alliteration, where he connects letters to try to create meaning. He's showing something. It happens all over the Old Testament. What I'm arguing is what we have right here at the beginning is you have reshith, then the second word right here, bara.
You don't need to understand Hebrew to notice these.
Anyone good with matching games, puzzles? We can. I can get my daughter in here and we can make this go a lot smoother on this part. Yeah, reshith, bara. I'm arguing you have a word play. And the author, the author's linking. Now, in the Hebrew, so what we have is we have reshith, bara, Elohim. like created it out there, Dave, if you saw that.
That was cool.
You're saying in the Hebrew, what verse is this that you're
It's
referring
Genesis
to?
1:1.
Okay.
So Genesis 1:1, you have Bereshit, and I'll translate it, try to make it a little clearer here.
I thought he was putting John 1 in the Hebrew.
No.
I thought so too.
Yeah, sorry about that. So what we have right here, in Hebrew, the verb normally comes first before the noun. So you have Elohim is the noun, so he created is referring to God created. By means the first one, God created. So God's the one doing the creating. But God is also, I'm arguing, being linked through a wordplay to the firstborn. I'm saying John's picking up on this, and so it's saying by me, so in in John 1 when he says, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God, he's picking up on the wordplay. He's saying the Word not only was in the beginning, the Word is God, and he's linking them through, I'm going to argue, through a Hebrew wordplay, and I think John's picking up on all of this right here in John 1.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
John 1:1. So, in the beginning there, are you equating the phrase in the beginning in John 1:1 with the firstborn?
No.
Okay.
In John 1,
that was referring to time?
Yeah, I'm saying that John 1, he's looking back at the beginning of the Torah, in which everything's
the beginning
created.
of the Torah.
Yeah, and he's saying at the beginning, which is Genesis 1, the creation. At the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. So yeah, John's seeing it as that's the beginning of creation, because all the heavens and earth were made by the firstborn. And so he's using the beginning,
Through
referring back to
speech.
that.
That's where he gets the idea of word. Because how does God create everything? By speaking.
Right.
Uh-huh.
You guys following me some here? Is this
Yeah,
make whether or not you agree with it, I at least want you to see the argument.
Mhm.
I want you to see what we're looking at here. All right, with that being said, look at 1 Corinthians 8:6, and this is just another time I'm just kind of nailing in here. 1 Corinthians 8:6. Someone read that.
Can I just go back to that real quick on the John 1 real fast?
Yeah, go ahead.
In the Greek, though,
NRK.
does that strictly refer to time, or can it mean location? And like you're trying
Yeah.
to say, in location of the Torah, you're saying it's located at the first of the Torah, the beginning of the Torah.
You know, I haven't thought too much through that. It could be either. I wouldn't have a problem with it being time, but also location. That makes sense too. If he's saying in the beginning and looking back at the beginning of the Torah, I wouldn't have a problem if he was saying the historical beginning, because I think you can see that creation begins through the firstborn in the Torah. I think that's historically. I don't think that's the purpose of Genesis 1:1, but I think sure. I mean, through him all things are made. So I wouldn't care. John could use it either way, and I'd be happy with it. I'm fine with that. But someone read 1 Corinthians 8, verse 6.
Yet for us there is but one God, the Father, from whom all things are, or whom are all things. We exist for him, and one Lord Jesus Christ, by whom are all things, and we exist through him.
Just again, the offhanded Lord Jesus Christ, by whom all things are, through whom all things are. It keeps the New Testament authors are just offhandedly mentioning this as like this is common knowledge. Everything came in through him. And what I'm arguing in my thesis is if you want to understand the New Testament, you've got to understand correctly the Old Testament. So I'm arguing that when Paul and these guys are saying this, when he's talking to I can't remember Christians in I can't remember what city, but he tells them, if you keep searching the what to learn about, to see if Christ is the one. What's he? The Scriptures. What is Paul looking at? He's looking at the Scriptures. Is that the New Testament? Does Paul have the New Testament in his hand? No, there is no New Testament. He's looking at the Scriptures. When he's going in here and arguing these things, I'm arguing he's not just creating this out of thin air. Paul's just not saying, hey, no, we haven't known this the whole time that it was the firstborn through whom all things are created. But now that I'm here, I'm going to create this new theology for you. I'm an apostle, I can do that. So you guys, even though it's not in the Scriptures, just listen to me. I'm arguing he's not doing that. I'm saying he's looking at the text and he's understanding it correctly. Who's not understanding it is us, is what I'm arguing. I'm arguing we're missing it.
That's
Okay.
Acts 17:11.
What's that?
Acts 17:11.
Okay, there you go.
He was
Acts.
talking to the Bereans.
There you go. Go ahead.
Do you think we need the New Testament for salvation?
No.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think you need the New Testament. I think you
You
get
think
saved
it's-
off the Torah.
Why do you think if it's, what's the purpose of the New Testament then?
I would say that this would be the way I put it. Let me make sure we answer the question correctly. What you're saying is, do I have to have the New Testament to get saved? And I would say, no, Abraham didn't have any Bible, and he got saved, okay, with God working in his life.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, I'm going to also argue, when Paul argues in Romans 10:9, and he says, you confess with your mouth. Well, he quotes from Deuteronomy and says, look, y'all got to have faith. And he pulls from Deuteronomy 32, which is arguing that we need to have faith. And so I'm arguing if you understand the Torah correctly, when you walk away from it, you know that the world's in a mess, you're a sinner, all men are evil, but there's a guy who's coming who's going to fix the world. All right, and Yahweh's going to send him. And if you look at the end of the poetry in Deuteronomy 30, it talks about God saving his people and forgiving their sins.
Mm-hmm.
And it also talks about the point of the text is to have faith, which you find in Deuteronomy 30, you find with Abraham's story. The way the author creates the Torah, which I'm hoping you guys will see in the next 10 weeks, is that when you walk away from the Torah, you're supposed to recognize you're a sinner, believe that God's going to fix it through the firstborn, through this guy who's coming, and have faith in Yahweh, that he's going to provide a way, and that your sins are going to be forgiven. I'm going to argue that's all in the Torah on its own. But now, the New Testament is, after that you have the prophets, the writings, you have movement, there's progression and stuff changing and happening. But why do we need the New Testament? Okay, well, because this guy, what did Numbers 24 say? It says, behold him, I behold him, but not now. I see him, but not near. A star will rise from Jacob. The idea is somebody's coming someday who's going to fix this. You can have faith in him, but he's not here yet. And so when the New Testament comes, guess who arrives? Him. He arrives. And so I'm going to argue, along with Paul from Romans 4 and many other spots that refer to, he's saying all along those who had faith are the ones who God saved, are the ones who God's going to redeem and forgive their sins. However, their sins were not officially paid for till Christ, because he came, and then he, in real place and time, the New Testament died on the cross for the sins of those who believe in God. And he accomplished it. Hence, it is finished. Right? At the Torah, was it finished? Well, no. We're still waiting for this guy to show up. But by the New Testament, it's finished. He's here. He came. He cleaned house. He kicked tail. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm saying. We need the New Testament in the sense that we needed Jesus to show up. Because if he didn't show up, then that would be a problem.
But even if he showed up, and he's going to show up without the text or not. I'm just thinking that to have salvation, you need to know who Jesus is. Not the Old Testament. Maybe it's different for the Old Testament saints. But if I don't have the Old Testament, then I can't know that's Jesus Christ. That who's the Messiah? I just know there is a Messiah, but I don't know it's Jesus Christ. So you think with that information, just knowing that there's a Messiah, that I'm saved?
Let's. I think the terminology is being split there. That's where we need to define those terms well, because
we can do it later.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The Messiah is Christ. Now, I think what you're asking, you're saying, well, I didn't know that it was this specific person, Jesus,
right, from
this century, from this day, and that's a more complicated question in regards to the Messiah hasn't come yet. He's not here yet. But you can have faith. Did Abraham know Jesus?
No. I guess not.
Yeah, of course he didn't know. But was he saved through
right.
faith? Yeah. Through Jesus?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. But I'm just thinking that if I don't need to know who Jesus is, then I don't need the New Testament, really.
If you don't need to know.
If salvation's not through Jesus' name alone, No,
it is through him. The difference is you're connecting the time and place. See if I can. When you're saying, we have to define what you mean by through. When you're saying salvation is through Jesus, yes, it is. It is through him and through him alone. But you're connecting to that. He had to be alive for that to be possible. And if that's the case, then everyone before him didn't know him and went to hell.
I'm just thinking, I would think